Man is an ethereal being. Ethereal, meaning a being of light, dwelling within a material animal form, a genetic vehicle, if you will. However, a mask that constitutes his personality. When he or she attains consciousness of his true immortal state, he or she may either throw off the shell or retain it. Man is free at that point. This attainment of freedom is gained by self-sacrifice, which is merely the renunciation or abandonment of an illusion, and by no means difficult to perform when its nature is understood. Without this understanding, however, an ascetic life is a very useless quality, for all sacrifices for the love of or aggrandizement of self are foolish, rather self being understood as the ego. The self cannot conquer the self. The ego cannot conquer the ego. The illusion cannot destroy the illusion. Such liberation and redemption take place not through self-conceit, but by the power of that entity which is the divine self of all beings, that element of God within you, that fractal of source, the God particle, if you will. Such attainment of divine self-knowledge is not an absorption into nothing, but an ascending of divine power, of an indwelling of the divine. An icicle is formed in the ocean. In form, it is different from the water that surrounds it, but in essence, it is identical therewith. It melts and becomes what it was before. It has not lost anything save its personal form. Within the all-consciousness is formed a speck of matter, owing to the birth of a delusion of self, delusion of ego caused by previous experiences, and spiritual heritage congealed by self-love and encrusted by self-conceit, penetrated by the heat of that love which springs from the realization of truth. The crust, the mask, the ego is dissolved, and man again enters into his true, celestial, all-conscious state. To surrender that which is no longer required and is merely an impediment in our way is not a sacrifice but a blessing. In the enjoyment of freedom, there is no room for the desire of bondage. The discrimination between freedom and slavery, between the enduring and the evanescent, is the key to the understanding of the great mystery. Grasp that key yourself and open the door that leads to immortality. Pure is that which is true, because it is free from falsehood. Pure is that which is real, for it is free from the unreal. Pure is that which is innocent, for it is free from sin. Pure is that love which is free from egoism. Pure is renunciation when it is free of all expectation of personal reward. Knowledge is pure when free from error, and from that freedom arises tranquility. Within tranquility resides beatitude and contentment, and within contentment is bliss, for it consists in the absence of all unfulfilled desires. Tranquility is the fountain of the revelation of wisdom, because only in a mind undisturbed by passions can the light of truth reflect its own purity, and the image of God assume substantial form. Freedom is purity, because the soul that is free of all selfish desires is purified of egoism and error. Freedom is mastery over self. Where the elusive selfhood ceases, there is nothing to be subservient nor to rule. He is not free who, owing to the unruliness of his lower nature, is forced continuously to stand guard over it. Free is he who has outgrown that self, the lower self. He who has become one with the law is not its subordinate. Freedom is the law by which all humanity, and through humanity all nature, aspires. Freedom is the true life, for it is that state in which no death exists. Forms die, the activity of life therein ceases to manifest itself, but life itself does not die. Thine freedom consists in obedience to the divine law, the will of God. This is divine universal love, which is the power of the realization of truth. God wills only to manifest himself to himself, and whosoever strives to obey the law, and thus to fulfill the conditions under which this manifestation can take place, he alone loves God, and not he who cries, "Oh Lord!" Neither do those love God who with prayers and incantations seek to explain to him their personal desires, or with the beating of drums and the blowing of trumpets attempt to persuade him to obey their request. The will becomes free through the recognition of truth. The free will of God and the free will of man are identical. Freedom is the completion of love, the union of the love of man to God with the love of God to his own manifestation in man. This love is self-knowledge. A merely intellectual knowledge is like an empty shell. It contains no real love. Neither does the love for illusions give birth to self-knowledge. Knowledge. Real love springs from the recognition of the oneness of the all that is. It is the at-one-ment, or harmony, by which the divine essence in all things becomes known. It is with the action of spiritual powers in matter, as within the hen and the egg. If there had been no hen, there would be no egg. And if no egg had existed, the hen would not have grown. The activity of each power is conditioned by that of the other. One gives birth to the other and is born from it. In the eternal, there is neither first nor last. If I recognize God as my own impersonal self, all that I sacrifice to God will be sacrificed to myself. In sacrificing or letting go my hold of that which in reality is nothing, the ego, I make no sacrifice, but gain the possession of all. For the purpose of enabling me to let go of that which is nothing, however, it is necessary to possess the power to recognize its non-entity, and this power comes only from the possession of truth. No one can endow himself with that which he does not possess. The truth is not of man's making. Therefore, no man can recognize the truth by his own efforts alone. That power comes to him only through the grace of truth. In other words, it is the result of his karma, caused by his obedience to the law in previous incarnation. When he is ready to receive it, it will descend upon him like the sunlight upon the earth. He who surrenders himself internally to his God is free, but he who without sacrificing his self only sacrifices his treasures for the sake of gratifying his desire for personal freedom gains nothing, for he is still bound by that personal desire and acts under the impulse of the delusion of self. That which enables man freely to surrender all his desires and possessions is the realization of the power and bliss of freedom itself, void of selfishness. Freedom is not merely a state, but a power. Otherwise, it cannot be experienced and known. A quality or condition becomes an experienced power in us when it is alive in our consciousness. A king, insensible to his imperial dignity, would be a poor ruler. A man who never experienced his own dignity as a human being is only an animal in human shape. To be conscious of the state in which we exist endows us with the power to fulfill its functions and develop its quality. Freedom is not bound to any locality. The spirit of man in freedom is everywhere and has the power to act in any place where it chooses to manifest its individual consciousness. Keeping in mind the fact that substantial forms, not only material, but also spiritual forms, are created by the spirit of man. There is nothing astonishing in the circumstance that a self-conscious spirit may produce thought images and apparitions representing his own character in places where the conditions for such manifestations are present. The thoughts of people continually act mutually upon each other and at great distances, even across the ocean. Many are not aware from whence their thoughts, ideas, and inspirations come. Thoughts are free to wander to whatever place they may be attracted, but the will is not free unless it have mastery over the thoughts. The enlightened will must be the Lord, and the desires the servants. If the master obeys his servants, they will make him an object of sport. To arise in freedom is to arise in power. This is not accomplished by weakness, nor by a flight of fancy, nor by any means of pious dreams or assumed indifference, nor by ignorance or contempt, nor by asceticism, vegetarianism, assuming certain postures, or holding one's breath. It is accomplished only in the power of that spirit which lifts us out of the sphere of self, and this power is our own when it becomes manifested in us. While we remain in that power, it is active within us. It forms the nutriment by which the soul grows strong, the mind firm, and the body healthy and beautiful. Without that power, all our philosophy will only be theoretical and imaginary, and our life only a vapor and dream. The present age, while excelling in intellect, is sadly deficient in that power. From the recognition of freedom springs the realization of justice. A man being led by desires has his special favorites, his likes and dislikes, and does not realize the power of justice, which endows alike all creatures with certain rights. But he who is above all beholds the eternal reality in a fly no less than in an elephant, in an idiot as much as in a sage. The nutriment of justice is love, because it strengthens the recognition of truth. The symbol of freedom is represented by the cross, formed of faith, love, hope, and patience. The cross represents the sacrifice of the illusion of self and the attainment of impersonal power, the death of the material elements, and the entering into freedom by means of the union of the soul of man with the Spirit of God. Bound by the chains of sensuousness, captured by the delusion of egotism, sleeps the soul, forgetful of its true origin and home. Subject to a continual change of birth, effort, and death with intermissions of rest, the soul suffers until it conquers the illusion that keeps it within the vicious circle of necessity. But awakening to the realization of its true being, it throws off its veil and enters again into freedom. The presentiment of the coming freedom, which arises when the power of self-knowledge begins to stir within the soul, is due to the presence of faith. Real faith is the indubitable recognition of a ray of spiritual light, at first dimly perceived through the clouds of matter, but whose source is the central sun of the universe. This presentiment is not yet perfect knowledge, only its beginning. But when the soul arises in that power, the mists disappear and the sunshine breaks forth in its glory. Belief and superstition, dogmas and opinions have nothing to do with faith. Theories are without spiritual power, even if based upon correct arguments. They do not constitute real faith, even if advocated by the most respectable authorities. No man has ever attained real knowledge through basing his faith upon the authority of any person whatever. True faith has no other foundation than the recognition of truth. It is the recognition of truth itself. Faith resting upon the dictum of this or that person, or upon any other basis than the direct perception of truth, cannot be theosophia, real knowledge, divine wisdom, or self-recognition of truth. True faith does not consist in opinions, nor in any system of beliefs in regard to the path. It is itself the path of light, which leads to divine self-knowledge. A man may be in possession of the true faith, and yet ignorant of the doctrines of external science, philosophy, and theology. Merely intellectual speculation has nothing to do with the possession of the spiritual power of self-perception. The beginning of that path of wisdom is light. Its middle, the word that speaks in the silence. Its end, the full revelation of the supreme and divine state of being, not of some other individual, but of that inconceivable state which constitutes the true self of everything, our own included. By the power of truth, we arrive at a true understanding, and by the power of understanding, we arrive at the perception of truth. Through the darkness, we come to the light. The light shows us the way, the darkness being necessary to enable us to distinguish the nature of light. The dawn of freedom begins at the moment when man realizes the power of faith, which means to experience the capacity to discriminate between the eternal and the evanescent within him. Whoever knows the eternal has already tasted of immortality, because only that which is immortal in man can enable him to know immortality. Immortality is freedom. The house in which freedom dwells is the omnipotence of divine law, for free will is itself the law to which all nature bows in obedience. Freedom is redemption. The freedom of man does not consist in liberty of the action of the senseless elements that constitute his animal nature, any more than the freedom of a nation consists in the liberty of its criminals and fools. Man maintains his freedom by subduing his subordinates, namely the desires and vagaries that spring from his lower nature. A man with the power of God in and above himself is ordained by that power as Lord over himself and does not need to call upon any other Lord or Master in the universe. The redemption of man takes place through no foreign power and by no merely external savior. It eventuates through internal wisdom, and the beginning of self-knowledge is the beginning of final redemption. This redeeming power of wisdom is neither a personal power nor a function of self. The self is an illusion and cannot be redeemed. The divine man redeems himself from the elusive, material, personal self, the ego, and in redeeming himself, he redeems of the personal man all the impersonal elements that belong to his own divine nature. Only that which is not bound by personality can enter into true liberty and immortality. Wisdom is the door to freedom, and self-knowledge the throne upon which freedom dwells. The light of truth shines from above upon the pathway of life, but wisdom is born in the soul of man when he recognizes the light of truth. The knowledge of a man is within, and of all the wisdom in the world, only that portion will benefit one which becomes manifest in himself. Love is the seat of faith, and the seat of man's wisdom is the word which the truth speaks silently in his heart. Experience is the mother of knowledge, and all knowledge not based upon experience is not real. For this reason, man was born to eat of the fruit of the tree of good and evil, that he may taste it himself and not merely learn some theory in regard to its flavor. Illusory knowledge is continually mistaken for real knowledge. But the touchstone of the latter is justice, and justice is measured by its works. Wisdom is not a product of nature. It rules all nature. Whatever its laws are obeyed, wherever its laws are obeyed, indeed. Wisdom rules all things in which it becomes manifest. It is supernatural in being superior to nature, but it becomes manifested in nature and not outside of it. It is a power higher than all mechanical forces, animal instincts, and intellectual function. It cannot be monopolized by any sect or society, by any religious fundamentalist, nor given out or revealed by any president or pope. The interior revelations of wisdom are not speculation. A truth once revealed is seen and experienced, and not subject to doubt by those in whom the revelation takes place. But it is not a true revelation to those who have not experienced it themselves. What the ancient sages and mystics taught of truth and divine revelation was not concocted by their intellects, nor produced by combining ideas, nor by any foreign god dwelling in the sky. It was revealed to them by the manifestations of divine wisdom within their own souls. All that is taught by modern philosophers who experience nothing of God is a repetition and combination of ideas learned from others. Speculation is based upon logic. but the revelation of truth rests upon nothing but its own divine self. All nature is a revelation of truth, even if we do not understand its meaning. It is like a book printed in a language not understood by everyone. Nature changes, but wisdom remains. If the whole world were to perish and heaven and earth disappear, divine wisdom would remain what it always was, and its will would cause a new manifestation by the creation of a new world. However intellectual a man may be, there is no real knowledge in him so long as the revelation of truth has not taken place in his soul. It is the manifestation of wisdom within the heart which illumines the mind and distinguishes the sage from the theorist. Real knowledge cannot be obtained from books. Books may teach us where we must seek for the truth, but they cannot furnish it. They may tell us what we must do to render possible the manifestation of wisdom, but they cannot reveal wisdom itself. Wisdom is imparted by nothing save its own power. All the things we see in nature are but symbols and representations of truth, not the truth itself. If we misinterpret the meaning of these symbols, it is not the fault of truth, but of our own ignorance. The truth, when seen and realized, is always self-evident. It is a light, and whoever realizes its presence both sees and knows the fact. He requires no other proof. But those who do not see its light will fail to recognize it in spite of all proof. The object of wisdom is to reveal itself to teach, educate, and elevate the beings in whom it becomes manifest, and to render them immortal by endowing them with self-knowledge. Wisdom liberates man from ignorance, error, and sin. It teaches him to recognize his own nature as an intelligent spiritual power in the universe, and to regard his material body as a non-essential part of his eternal being. Wisdom is the realization of the divine will, and this realization consists in becoming and not in mere theory. Thy will be done means let us attain spiritual knowledge. In other words, let divine wisdom be manifested in us. For the will of God consists alone in striving to manifest divine wisdom, and there is nothing to hinder that manifestation in us except our own ignorance. To know the forms and forces of nature and their mutual relations is objective science, but not yet divine wisdom. Science deals with phenomena. Wisdom is the revelation of truth, eternal and unchangeable. Science without a foundation of wisdom is without truth, because it is barren of any perception of the eternal reality. Only that science is true which has for its foundation the recognition of eternal truth.
Namaste, Namaskaram.